When my daughter Stephanie was a preschooler, she had a favorite book, the Boo Boo book. The Boo Boo book was a nonfiction picture book about how wounds heal. And so we learned about fibrin and the mesh that it makes with the blood vessels, or not the blood vessels, the blood cells, and to create a scab, the whole 9 yards. It was really detailed. And I was surprised that my daughter really stuck with it. But she actually seemed invested in this book. It was like she remembered her own past boo-boos, and sometimes she'd even look at the place where she used to have one, and she'd press on it, and then she'd go back to the book and read some more. I think she was processing how our bodies heal. Our gospel lesson today has its own boo-boo story. When the risen Jesus first comes to his disciples, it was the first day of Jesus' resurrection at the beginning of the story, and Jesus appears even though the doors are locked with his disciples who are hiding out, and he shows them his hands at his side. And then a week later, he comes back because Thomas hadn't been there, and he does the same thing for Thomas, shows him his hands and his side where the wounds are, and he invites Thomas to touch them. So my question is this: if Jesus is resurrected from the dead, then why not be completely healed? Why walk around with scars or maybe even wounds still? This is a detail that was captured in a statue in one of the churches I used to serve back in Connecticut. It was a life-size statue of Jesus, and it had the marks in his hands and feet. And it was done by a Danish 19th century sculptor, and it's famous. Like, there's actually one apparently outside the Mormon Tabernacle in Salt Lake City. So this Jesus, you'll see him, he's got his arms stretched out like this in a big embrace. Now, I have to say to you that I was a little not so thrilled about statues. They didn't really do a whole lot for me. And I had to breeze through that sanctuary a lot in this tiny church to get places where I needed to go. And on quiet days, when I was there at the office by myself, I'd give them a high five going by. But one day I was feeling particularly low. I was going through a lot of personal struggles, and I just couldn't see my way clear. So I'm walking through the sanctuary, not breezing, because it was not a breezy day for me. And I see that Jesus, and his hands are outstretched. And suddenly, I see his wounds, and I want to touch them. It's unexplainable, really, but I allowed myself to walk over and to put my hand on his foot, where there was this football-shaped opening of his wound, and I touched its hard coldness, and I thought, that's the shape of halos for saints in medieval iconography, a sign of God's presence. And suddenly that weight I was carrying around eased inside of me. I thought, he's here. He's here with me in my pain and in my wounds. Perhaps you've had a moment of solace in the midst of a difficult time. Perhaps there's someone who's reached out to you to tend to you when you have been wounded. I think about that time a lot as I minister with others. And I think about it, of course, when I hear this gospel story about the invitation to the disciples and to Thomas to see and to touch the wounds, the scars. Given when this story happened, On the eve of Jesus' resurrection, just days after his horrific death, and a week later, those images of his terrible suffering, the unbelievable cruelty, that was all fresh in the disciples' minds. Their own guilt at not being able to help Jesus or even to show up for him in his most dire hour. These are things that they were carrying. The doors were locked because they were scared out of their minds that they were going to be the next ones on the cross. And on top of that, they had whatever burdens they carried throughout their lives on a daily basis. I don't know if you're watching The Chosen, but that TV series about Jesus dramatizes and imagines some of the disciples. And it imagines that maybe one of the disciples had a physical disability that made it difficult and painful for him to keep up with the others. And he struggles with that. And there's another disciple that loses a beloved person to him, and he is so devastated and angry. So these disciples had all these fresh wounds from the past week, and they had everything that they were already carrying. Too much. And yet, this is where Jesus comes. And perhaps this is why. He doesn't come all dazzling bright, perfectly fixed. No. He comes perfectly human, bearing the wounds and scars like the disciples bore wounds and scars. In his humanity, Jesus understood what it meant to hurt. He understood also what it meant to heal and forgive, and that's why he was there. Peace be with you, he says. Touch me, he says. Jesus' compassion and presence in this moment with his scars opened these disciples to move beyond their fear and pain into a new future where his scars and their scars would not only be healing, but have purpose. I believe the same is true for us, the modern day disciples of Jesus. It is said sometimes that the church is meant to be a hospital for sinners, not a museum for saints. And I take that to mean we've got our wounds and scars. To some extent, we come to this place precisely for that reason, to meet Jesus, who knew what it was like to have wounds and scars. We need a place where it is perfectly okay to be just as we are. We don't have to put on our game face or pretend like we have it all together. We come to this place knowing it's okay to be vulnerable. And when we come to that place where we are fully ourselves, we are open to this Jesus in a new way. This Jesus who invites us to enter his life through his wounds, to join with him and to experience his solidarity with us and ours. Jesus for us is an intimate companion in this journey. And in his own suffering, his own endurance of those unbelievable circumstances, we find endurance and strength lent to us from him. What we see in this gospel story is that Jesus is resurrected and he didn't leave his wounds behind. Instead, he transformed them into a powerful place of connection to the disciples themselves, locked in fear. And in that moment of peace be with you and touching his scars, they were freed. They were freed to share forgiveness with others. They were freed, and in the next years and decades, they would go all over the known world, sharing that same healing and freedom and forgiveness. You see, Jesus spoke to the disciples through his wounds, and they took those burdens and wounds that they carried, and they connected to others who were carrying burdens and wounds. The scars are a connection to Jesus, to yourself, and to everybody else. We see examples of this kind of connection right here at Epiphany. A little over a year ago, we started a new ministry. We creatively called it the Home Communion Visitors, because that's what they do. Some of you who are here are a part of that ministry. They take the sacrament, Holy Communion, to people who can't get here due to illness or age. And as Pastor Heidi, who set up this ministry, was training the over 30 people who said yes to this ministry, by the way, we can still use more, so if you're interested, see me. Pastor Heidi said to them, reflect on a significant struggle in your lives. These people that we are visiting have experienced many losses. Our losses and being in touch with them will make it easier for us to empathize with others. And she suggested that perhaps one of the best things that we could do to prepare for bringing Holy Communion and actually ministering to someone else was to be in touch with the wounds that we carry and to experience our own healing, to genuinely listen to another person exactly where they are. Psychologist Carl Jung coined a term for this decades ago, and he called it the wounded healer, a person who is in touch with their own scars, and from that place of understanding and compassion is able to reach out in healing to others. And it is a truth. We are often taught to hide our broken places, but they are actually an asset for us if we are willing to touch them. Because when we touch them, we enable ourselves to connect with others and share Jesus' healing. Our scars make us uniquely qualified to walk with others through similar circumstances. Some of you may be particularly touched because of your life circumstances to the Schneider House of Hope, or to families that are undergoing great transition, like we were hearing about from Rose Waskey and Family Promise. Your life experience might have connected you to someone who is differently abled. And so you might feel what is in your heart connects you to Wings of Hope and the Haitian Tamoon Foundation. But your heart is shaped in a particular way to connect with other people, to share Christ's compassion and Jesus' healing and God's strength. And so the suffering that you are experiencing is not without meaning. I am not saying that God has given it to you, but I am saying that God will use it. And when God uses your suffering, it heals not only someone else, it also heals you. There is a place in our heart shaped by where we've been, connected to Christ, that motivates each one of us It creates a place of deep compassion. That is the place where the Holy Spirit is calling you. I invite you to pray on that, to open yourselves to the healing that Christ is reaching out to you with, his hands extended. Today I invite you, touch his wound. Consider your own. And know that Jesus' words are for you. Do not doubt, but believe. Believe there is more to the story for you. Believe that we have a God of forgiveness and healing. Believe that we have a God that resurrects old dreams and makes them new. Believe that with Jesus' touch and his healing and his presence, that is a gift to you. It is his gift to you to share. Amen.